And welcome to Civil Discourse. I'm Jamie Wojciechowski, and today our panel is discussing the Dakota Access Pipelines. Would you both like to introduce yourselves real fast and just give a quick history of yourselves as activists?
I'll go ahead and start. My
Go
name
ahead.
is Jessica Domino. I am a Tlingit from Southeast Alaska. I live and work in the Seattle area.
Go ahead, Cindy. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Halito, asa Chiefo Cindy Beach LaMar, Micha Mississippi Chata Siohoke. I have been active in the civil rights community here in Seattle for about 6 or 7 years, working very closely with Millie Kennedy. And I'm retired, so I have plenty of time to devote to civil activities and really bringing the issues, the awareness out to people.
Awesome. And Millie is having technical issues, but hopefully she joins us at some point too. So last week I did two interviews on the Dakota Access Pipeline. One was more on specifically what was going on there, and the other one was a little bit more on how it was affecting people who weren't directly involved in the protests. So I guess I would like to, if either of you can give kind of a breakdown of what's kind of happened in the last week with the protests, that would be great.
Well, first of all, we don't really refer to the protesters as protesters. They're water protectors, and that's what they're doing. They're protecting their rights to water, to clean water, the rights to their land, and the right to life, actually, because water is life. And this past Sunday in Seattle, we held a rally to get out awareness because, you know, mainstream media, there's Millie, mainstream media is not doing us any favors. So we have to get out the word in other ways, and social media, like your show, is one way to do that.
Millie, would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, my name is Millie Kennedy. I'm Tsimshian from Southeast Alaska, and I'm also an attorney and an activist along with these two beautiful women.
Awesome. And we're just discussing, to catch you up, we're just discussing what's happening in with the protests and everything that's going on. We talked about how last week we did 2 interviews, and then we're kind of seeing what has transitioned and what has happened and grown in the past week. So would you like to comment that, you or Jessica?
Go ahead.
Yeah. There's been a lot happening since a week ago when you met with Matt. As we know, the movement is growing. The tribes went from the state of Washington over to Standing Rock, and we had our rally last Sunday. We decided to have the rally because we're a huge urban Indian community, and as Cindy and Jessica may have said, we can't make it over to Standing Rock, so we decided that we had to do something about this at a picnic that Jessica and I were at. And so we four, myself, Cindy, Jessica, and her mother, Laverne Wise, decided to have a rally. And Cindy and I have been doing rallies in the greater Seattle area for several years together. We're a team, and now we're adding Jessica to our team. So we have roughly 88,000 urban Indians in the greater Seattle area, and that includes King, Snohomish, and Pierce County. So with 88,000 urban Indians in this area, and Jessica's going to like this, over 5,000 of them are Tlinkits. And I'm not a Tlingit, but I'm married to one. I was at a Tlingit and had a picnic, and I was live streaming everybody at the picnic just to have fun, and they started talking about the Dakota Access Pipeline. So this is how the rally came about, and I called Cindy up and said, "Hey, Cindy, are you ready to rally again?" And so she's always ready, and so Cindy does her stuff, I do my stuff. I'm the one who does the permitting, and she does the press releases and uh, does the Facebook invite, and then Jesse helped us co uh, MC it, or whatever you want to call it. Co-whip the first rally, and we're having another one tomorrow.
Awesome. And Jessica, do you want to just talk about, I guess, the rally and how you think it went and stuff like that?
So our Seattle rally was truly inspirational for a lot of people who hadn't necessarily had a chance to hear or see what was going on, either through the Facebook feeds or through personal interactions from family that were coming back. It was one of those moments in our Seattle area where it was a gathering of many Indigenous peoples from across the Sound. And for myself personally, I felt a huge connection back to where my cousins and my other family members who are part of the Sioux Nation are living.
Yeah, it was interesting because I'm in Los Angeles, and we had on Saturday there was a big Enough is Enough rally, and it really was a Bernie Sanders organization that now is trying to transition, and they kind of did a rally just on progressive issues. And one of the interesting things for me was this was really the first time at a rally like this that I've attended or that I've heard of where a big part of it was members of the Sioux Nation and different Native American tribes talking about what was going on and the issues facing those communities. So do you see a transition, I guess, of awareness throughout the country as a whole on these issues?
Personally, from what I've seen, sadly, it's because of the media blackout that's happened in the mainstream media. It's really hard to see the changes within the consciousness of the U.S. for the overall population. I know that there are pockets of allies who are going through some of the same sort of struggles when it comes to civil unrest within their own communities, and they themselves are coming and standing with us. And I say we because it doesn't matter where you're at or where you're from. In an Indigenous area, we're all family to each other. And something like this is one of those moments where it pulls all of us together.
And that's very apparent what's happening actually down at Standing Rock right now. You have tribes who have historically been enemies who are now standing side by side with each other for a common goal, and that's for their, oops, I just lost my phone. The preservation of their water. And hundreds of tribes together. And it's history in the making. That's what it is. It's history in the making that we're all witnessing and getting out the word.
I know for our Tlingit Nation from Alaska, we have a canoe, one of our canoes that's coming down from Alaska that's already on its way over to Standing Rock. And they're taking supplies. They gathered together. They took supplies from here in the Seattle area, gathered more of our Tlingit and Haida members that live here in the urban setting, and we're taking them with them over there to the Standing Rock Reservation to be united with our Standing Rock brothers and sisters. I'm really proud of our Tlingit and Haida people and our Tlingit and Haida Executive Council for writing a resolution and standing in solidarity with the Standing Rock Sioux. We were one of the first tribal nations to be able to do that. And I was extremely proud of our president and our Executive Council for doing that.
Yeah, so going back to the talking about, I guess, the mainstream media blackout, do you feel that it's essential to break through that blackout, or do you feel that it's kind of useless and there has to be other ways of going around building the awareness at this point?
I don't feel like it's useless, Jamie. I think that we're at a serious turning point in our country involving politics where we've had probably the most contentious presidential race in my lifetime. And I'm 58 years old. And as you know, I was a Bernie national delegate, and Bernie spent a lot of time educating a lot of Bernie-crats around the country about Native Americans. I went to 2 of his rallies in Seattle, Washington, and both times he spent at least 10 minutes or more during his rallies talking about Native American history, acknowledging it, and validating it for us. And that's something new for us to be having somebody do that, because nobody wants to talk about the shameful history in the United States. It's not my shame, it's not Cindy's shame, it's not Jessica's shame, but it's history's shame. It's not your shame either, Jamie. So to have somebody like Bernie Sanders bring that to the forefront, I really think that's why a lot of Bernie followers are jumping on the bandwagon and getting behind the Dakota Access Pipeline issue, because I look at the Bernie pages every day and they're like flooded with no Dakota Access Pipeline. Water is life. People are constantly posting everything on social media, and we aren't the only major city who's done a protest. There was one in Billings, Montana. You mentioned LA, and I know they had one a couple of weeks ago as well that I watched on live streaming. There was one in Dallas, Texas, I believe yesterday. So we decided we were going to call all the cities, do a shout out to all of them, to challenge them at our rally to have protests every week until we stop this pipeline, because many of us cannot make it there. But I talked to a friend who, she's African American, and we were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and how everybody's always arguing about, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter, Native Lives Matter, all lives matter. But you know what? The Black Lives Matter movement is a movement that is attached to police brutality and the modern day lynching of African American men. That's a hashtag, that's a movement. We don't have to compete. So we could have our own separate movement, and we don't have to call it Native Lives Matter. If it's no Dakota Access Pipeline, so be it. I think that this is our time to have a movement. It's time for people to attend our rallies and support us, because we've been supporting all kinds of people in this country, and we are the first people Indigenous, or we are the people that are Indigenous in this nation, and we don't get a lot of attention. But you talk about mainstream media, we're such a smidgen of a race, and I'm not trying to say that to insult my people. If people know the history of the United States, they understand why there's so few of us due to the genocide of our people through smallpox and everything else that happened throughout history.
Okay, and welcome to Civil Discourse. We are back. We had some technical difficulties. YouTube decided to kick us off the call. So we can just kind of pick up where we left off. Millie, do you remember what you were saying?
Yes, I did. Okay. I felt like, yes, this is a real serious time in history with a lot of people in our country unhappy with our government and wanting change. So I felt that being a Bernie Sanders delegate, he also got blacked out. We got blacked out, and he got blacked out of the primaries. So being blacked out on this issue makes sense to me, because I feel like, why would the media want to bring mainstream focus on no Dakota Access Pipeline? Because you have billionaires involved, and if Hillary and if Obama is pro-TPP and Hillary is anti-TPP, then she needs to step up to the plate. She needs to say no TPP, and the no Dakota Access Pipeline fits clearly within the TPP because we want to protect our environment. We want to protect our climate, as Jesse said earlier. And another part going on with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe is that they have grave sites there, and there's an act called the Native Graves and Repatriation Act, where if you're doing an environmental impact statement and you're going to develop and you run into a site, you have to halt all construction. And it has to go through a formal process that includes the government-to-government relationship with the tribes, along with consultation to figure out how they're going to go around that grave site or anything that is ancestral to the tribes, because that's protected by law. And we have a very difficult relationship with the federal government. And Jesse and I were talking about this last week about tribal sovereignty. And we are considered through common law. That's common law. These are laws, just basically cases determined by the United States Supreme Court. So under Supreme Court common law, a case called United States versus Kagama, Congress has plenary power over tribes. So that's a very delicate relationship. And tribes are very nervous about these elections because of that. And so Congress could take away tribal sovereignty at any time because we have this relationship that was done through the conquest theory, the discovery theory, and all these theories in the Marshall Trilogy. So the federal government has a trust responsibility over this guardian-ward relationship to protect the land and the resources, and they are not doing that. And that also includes habitat protection. So when they're not protecting the water source of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, they're not fulfilling their trust responsibility to that tribe. So many, many tribes have been passing resolutions because that's the way they do things, and writing letters and supporting Standing Rock because these tribes are protecting their own tribal sovereignty as well.
And it's interesting that Millie brought up the burial sites, because going back to what happened yesterday out there in North Dakota, the day before, the tribe had put in their paperwork stating sacred and ceremonial locations and burial sites. They had these sites where they had to submit all of their paperwork to Washington, D.C., to the judge who was going to be working with them to look at these sites before the Dakota Access Pipeline and their company would be able to move forward in the alternative site where they were planning to put this pipeline. It's very challenging because yesterday it got very passionate and very heated on both sides. The company came in and they had bulldozers and they were going through some of those same sites that they had just restricted and had put in their paperwork that these are sites, ceremonial sites, burial sites. Those same sites are some of those same things that Millie was talking about them being protected. But before the government could come in, examine everything, and check to make sure that, yes, these are ceremonial sites, yes, they can be protected, the company came in with its bulldozers, its trucks, and its dogs and destroyed some of these sacred sites. And that's what the media, the mainstream media, is not showing. They're only showing the rioters and the protesters. But what they're not showing is why the people were so passionate about those locations. They were under protection. They were on that list of areas that cannot be disturbed until they can go in and actually see. But before anything could happen, you had those bulldozers coming in and destroying those sacred sites. Now, out there in North Dakota, the people are going back out there and they're singing prayer and healing songs because their ancestors' burial sites were disturbed. That would be like a company deciding that they're going to bulldoze the Arlington National Cemetery. That's what I can equate it to. None of us would stand for it because that's hallowed ground for the military men and women who have served. And that's exactly what these sacred sites were for the Dakota, for the Sioux, was sacred and hallowed ground.
Yeah, and you were talking about the just for people who don't know and haven't been keeping up with this who are watching the bulldozers and the dogs, because I was also watching some live feed of people who were at the protest and the dogs were attacking people. And it's interesting because at the beginning the media was, when the protest first started, one of the first things the mainstream media did cover was that there were allegations that some of the protesters had pipe bombs and were getting violent, which, to my knowledge and everything I've said, there's been absolutely no proof of any of that happening. There's been contrary to that because there's been live stream showing the opposite of that happening. But now with the company coming in and things actually getting violent, initiated by the company, and to my knowledge also there's been no retaliation or no violence in return, but you see that potentially growing to that place if one side if the company decides to come in with dogs and get more violent. How do you see that changing what's, I guess, happening on the grounds?
That's not going to happen. Native Americans have been known to be peaceful protesters. Every protest we've had, we've always remained peaceful, and they've made that very clear at Standing Rock that they're going to remain peaceful no matter what. And I watched Amy Goodman's video a couple of times yesterday, and I heard protesters tell one of the protesters, "Don't fight back, we have to remain peaceful." So I think that I don't know if any of you seen the picture that was fabricated to make it look like a dog had bitten a little girl's face.
Yeah.
And that picture had been circulating. Well, the protesters quickly got the word out that that was fabricated in order to get people to get angry and go over to Standing Rock and get violent. But they're trying to entice the violence through that type of propaganda. So we have to always be a step ahead of them when things go viral like that and stop people from sharing it as soon as we find out about these things. And that's what's really good about knowing people from Standing Rock. Indian country is so small, many of us know one another. And Dr. Sarah Jumping Eagle got on Facebook yesterday and said, "Don't post that picture. This is propaganda. It's meant to entice the protesters to make us look violent."
Yeah.
And she's my friend on Facebook, and so I seen that and started circulating it. Other people were already circulating it, and it's really good that we continue to remain peaceful. And at all our rallies in Seattle, Cindy and I always make sure we have peacemakers there, and I'm sure that they have the same thing going on at Standing Rock, where they have people called the water protectors, but they're trained to remain peaceful and not react to the security guards who aren't even trained as police officers. But that's just all propaganda. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Lawrence O'Donnell is going to say once he comes back and airs whatever he airs on MSNBC. I hope that they don't gag him. I know that a lot of reporters are sticking their necks out to report things that they really believe in, and I know that personally this issue is very held dearly to Lawrence O'Donnell's heart, as well as Van Jones, who went live
Mm-hmm.
streaming about a week ago on his own. And they work for MSNBC, CNN. They could get possibly fired over this stuff for putting it on mainstream media.
Yeah, I think it's hard because with, I mean, this is a specifically, I think, difficult issue for them to cover just because our news no longer is about telling the facts. You always have to have an angle to it. And I feel like there's a delicate balance. Why they don't cover it at all is probably because, and this is complete speculation and what I think, is that they can't necessarily side with the Native American community, because then it looks like they're going against the pipeline company, and they're not going to go for the pipeline company because I don't think probably a lot of them don't feel like that's the right side to be on. So then they just don't cover it at all, and that's complete speculation. But I think that's why you see it so much in kind of new media news, is because most of that is privately funded and low budget, and they're not beholden to any kind of major corporations or companies who are funding what's going on there. But I do think there's a big transition in, especially because I've seen so much coverage on new media outlets, and I think it's a good way to energize, especially young people and young progressives and people who are very likely to want to get active with what's going on, because right now we have a very large generation gap between who gets their media from mainstream media and who gets it online.
Well, I respectfully disagree to some certain extent.
Please.
I don't agree that because the people who own the pipeline companies, Enbridge and these people from Texas, are private owners of a pipeline, that for some reason, whatever, the mainstream media doesn't want to get involved because they don't want to side with the little bit of Indians in this country against these multi-billionaires, because, again, you have a huge federal Indian law twist in this picture that involves the federal government, and the tribe cannot be bypassed. That's what's happening. It's not just siding with the billionaires or siding with the little bit of Indians in the country. I think that the mainstream media has a responsibility to report on this issue, like they do Black Lives Matter when people are getting shot. What's the difference? I don't think we have to say, oh, they don't want to side with people with a lot of money who own these private pipeline companies versus these poor tribes in North Dakota and Native Americans. Is anybody ever going to want to talk about Native Americans openly? Can you think of, Jamie, I'm going to put you on the spot here, okay? Now, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Can you please let me know, somebody who's alive, one superstar in this country, and I guess I'm speculating I know who you're going to say, that's alive, that's Native American?
That's recognizable amongst the vast majority of people.
Yes. You could say the person's name and snap. Everybody automatically knows them, like Macklemore, like Lady Gaga.
Yeah, I have no clue. Yeah.
Can you name one?
Probably not. No.
Well, I thought you might say Sherman Alexie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that's just trying to state a point that, why can't mainstream media give us our day in court and give us part of the mainstream limelight for once.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it
Black
also
Lives.
goes. I think it goes the difference, and this is what you're getting on, and it's not that I mean I think this is awful, but I think our media has very much become about ratings, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's that it's a small population, and the reason the Black Lives Matter gets coverage, and it didn't get coverage at the beginning. What gets coverage is the violence. Whenever it gets violent, or because it's the police brutality and there's violence involved, that's what gets the ratings, and that's, I think, why that primarily gets covered, and now it's been in our consciousness long enough that people just naturally cover it. But at the beginning, it wasn't covered as much until only the violent aspects of it were covered, and I think that has to do with the ratings. And I completely agree with you that that's not what it should be about, and they should be about informing the public. And I think that's just a huge problem with the mainstream media in general.
Well, don't you think that dogs biting innocent children and peaceful protesters is reporting violence?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And Millie, I think that it's interesting, and Jamie sort of was talking like about this and how it is sort of within our country. The media within our country, has become about ratings. But I find that it's very intriguing to me that we're getting press overseas. That this has become a huge thing for them to watch. And it just showcases how the government of the U.S. treats its own indigenous people. It shows the rest of the world how then they would treat their own allies, who they themselves consider an ally. And so it's very interesting to me, from being a college student in our American Indian Studies and the political science classes that I've had. I find it very intriguing to see how the international response to what's going on there in North Dakota has been massive, not just in Europe, but in South and Central America, because all of us are going through some of the same things when it comes to natural resources under attack, and having to then put the brakes on things, not because of the environmental impacts, yes, but the educational impacts, and how can we get these words out to others to let them know that, yeah, we're not still just only in your textbooks, but we're actually still here. We practice our way of life. That people, indigenous peoples around the world, are still a part of the mainstream societies. I think that part of looking at the media and how the international media has been seeing and viewing us, what's happened, like I said, down in Central and South America, but then also in Australia and New Zealand with their own indigenous peoples. And then you look at what's happened in Thailand and other places where they have their indigenous peoples. They're starting to gain recognition. The governments are finally starting to realize that without balance with each other, then there isn't going to be harmony or balance within the rest of their own societies. And I think that's something that this movement has the ability to try and tip the scales for the Native people here in the U.S.
Yeah, I agree. We are still here, but a lot of people don't know that. They do think we're part of history and we're in the past and we're in the museums, and they like to look at our art and look at us like we're in the past, but we are still here. We've existed since time immemorial, and I really think, maybe I'm kind of like a Washington State snob, but I really think a lot of things start here. We're a very liberal state. We are not afraid to start things new, like $15 an hour started like 10 minutes from where I live at SeaTac Airport. Kashama Sawant went there. She protested with the airport workers there, and they were fighting for $15 an hour. She got arrested. It was all over local news, and now it's a national thing. Indigenous Peoples Day started here through
Hmm.
us. And now almost every major city across America wants Indigenous Peoples Day to replace Columbus Day. And we're at the front lines doing this stuff. So if we have to keep pushing the other major cities to cover this story, if we have to push mainstream media to cover this story, and let's see how far Lawrence gets. Let's see if Van Jones gets to put this on CNN without being censored. Let's see what happens. But violent dogs are violent, vicious dogs, and children and people are getting bitten by them. We've seen that with Amy Goodman's show yesterday. So if that's not vicious enough for them, what is? It's too bad we have to be a society that's addicted to these excited utterances where people are getting shot and killed in order to gain attention. And why have a media blackout on this? I really do think there is a media blackout on the No Dakota Access Pipeline. I do think it's political. I do think that it would make some politicians in a presidential election year look bad to make this mainstream media. And why aren't you taking a stand, President Obama? Why aren't you taking a stand, Hillary Rodham Clinton? Well, I won't say the T name, but none of these people have said anything. The only people that I heard talk about standing up against the Dakota Access Pipeline is Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein. I haven't heard anyone else.
Very
Where are
true.
they?
Yep.
Where are they?
And
What's going on, Obama?
the Native Nations.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, the Native Nations. They're noticing the lack of involvement on the behalf of our current president. They're not. He was given a name by a Native nation. He was adopted into their nation, thanked by a Native nation for his work on behalf of Native nations, and yet he is standing idly by and not saying anything, not doing anything. Nothing has come from the White House, nothing has come from any of his chiefs of staff, nothing. And his lack of involvement thus far has definitely been noticed by a lot of tribal organizations and tribal nations, that he hasn't said anything.
Cindy, did you want to say something?
No, I'm good. I think Millie and I, we're on the same mind on a lot of things. So whatever Millie says, like I said, we're of the same mind on all of these. So, and she's a much more eloquent speaker than I am.
Awesome. So I guess my last question is, because I agree with everything you're saying about awareness and the knowledge, and I know a lot of people within the Bernie movement. I know just a ton of people who knew nothing about Native American issues or the history, and like you said, because he kind of made that major part of his platform and what he talked about, it brought just an awareness that people didn't have. And then when we were having the rallies here and stuff, that was something that his supporters and just progressives in general really started wanting to bring in and give voice to. So I guess my question is, what can I guess non-Native American allies do to help assist the struggle, specifically people who aren't able to go and stand at Standing Rock? Or
I think they could do what Matt Remley asked them to do at our rally last week. They can send money to the Legal Defense Fund, because there's people practicing civil disobedience over there all the time who are getting arrested. They have to pay for their attorney who's fighting in the federal district courts for them. And I think that Cindy, Jessica, and I are going to continue to have rallies in Seattle every week until there is no more pipeline. But we're also challenging major cities around the country to do the same thing. It's not hard to do a rally. Last week was just getting warmed up. It was a more formal rally where we had a permit. Now, knowing your First Amendment rights to free speech, you don't need a permit to have a rally as long as you're in a public park, as long as you're not using amplified sound, as long as you're not blocking traffic or sidewalks, and you keep the people moving. You could use bullhorns, and you could have a rally in many places, but a lot of people don't know that. So tomorrow we're going to have our first rally where we didn't get a permit because we decided to use Westlake Park, which is right in the heart of downtown Seattle. And we're going to have an audience right there because we're right downtown Seattle. And we're going to be loud so that people could hear us.
I think another thing that people who want to be able to help in getting information out, not only sharing the information from the tribe, but writing your own state congressmen, writing your own state senators, and letting them know your feelings on what's going on over there. Making sure that your voice, if you decide that you want to utilize it within, which is your complete power to do, not being afraid to let your elected officials know how you, as a voting citizen within their districts, know how you feel about this issue, this topic that affects over two-thirds of the country because of the water access. I mean, that's huge. Two-thirds of our country will be affected by what's going to happen along that pipeline route.
Yeah, and I would say too, just from my own experience and wanting to make activism a little bit more mindful in general, is with in trying to share the information and the knowledge with others and expand that awareness. If you're an ally, and this is really of any issue, really try to share the stories of the people who are directly affected. I think that's the best way, because everyone's used to seeing personal rants on Facebook about feelings and all this, and what really I see as effective and the most mindful way to really enlighten people on certain issues is just let them experience the people who are actually being affected, because their stories are the ones that are going to just shine the most light, as opposed to having a secondhand kind of explanation of what's going on. So share the interviews that you see, share articles that are actually written by the Native American community that's dealing with this, and many other issues. So I think that's my 2 cents on how you can help. And yes, and Cindy put up a little earlier, you can go back, and I'll put this in the description, she's putting it up now, where people can donate to help as well. And then also check out whichever city you're in, just do Google search, look through Facebook, see if there are any rallies or anything that's going on, and if there's not, try to start something yourself, even if it's just a few people getting together and watching interviews or starting a dialogue. It all makes a huge difference.
And if they want to know their rights, Jamie, all they have to go is to the American Civil Liberties Union page on free speech publications that apply to their particular state that they live in. And the ACLU is always posting people, telling people how to protest and knowing their rights. So it's real easy to throw together a protest, and Cindy and I have done more than our fair share together. We're a team, and we could throw a rally together overnight and protest. So I think that people just need to keep protesting until there's no more Dakota Access Pipeline, but we're not going to back down. We're going to keep doing this, and we request that all the urban Indian communities around the nation, because urban Indians make up 74% of all natives across the country. So, as you know, in LA, there's a lot of urban Indians. That's where I assume you are, right, Jamie?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge urban Indian population, probably one of the largest. So you probably have a lot more than 88,000 there, but we make up 74% of the Washington State's Native American population. Because once we step foot off of our reservations, our tribal rights don't follow us wherever we go. So there's a lot of urban Indian communities. They're the ones who started the American Indian movement. This is a movement that evolved out of the tribe, and you have a lot of protesters there who are urban Indians and grassroots activists, but we can't do anything, we can never do anything alone because our population across the country is very small per capita in terms of the rest of the group. So you don't see Hillary or Trump chasing our votes because we're not a really large voting bloc. We make up roughly 2 to 3% of the entire population in a country that was once ours. So there's not a lot of us, and they don't know how we're supposed to look.
Yeah, the silent minority in our own country.
Exactly.
Not for long.
Because we're not all Hollywood stereotypes.
Right. We had a whole. That was my one of the interviews I did on this topic last week. Was with a Native American actress, and a big part of it was us talking about the stereotyping in Hollywood and how to break through that. So if you're interested in that, watch that interview back there for anyone who's watching. Thank you so much for being on the show. I learned so much, and I hope that our viewers find this useful. It's been nice because this is the third kind of segment I've done, and they've all been very different and highlighted different ways to help and different things to be aware of if you are an ally or affected, which so many people are, as you're bringing up. It's not just a Native American issue. It's affects really everyone in the country, because if this pipeline goes through, what's stopping the next pipeline from coming through your neighborhood?
Water is life. Water is life for all of us.
And that has been the theme of everything, that all the protests and the rallies and the gatherings that I've been to here in LA. That's the theme, is water is life, and I don't think anyone can or will disagree with that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you,
night.
Jamie. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Jacoby.
We do appreciate
Sheesh.
enjoy Shishin. Thank you.